Not only do you have to contend with the superintendents of the coaster, you also have the mayor of Half Moon Bay. So, Marina.
For the past few years, the city has participated in a program called Community Schools Project to the tune of $40,000. Certainly not a whole lot, but it's a lot to the city.
Absolutely.
And as you know, that the state is starting to rob cities of money. They're calling it a 3-year loan in the future. It'll be a couple $100,000 from the city of Half Moon Bay, which is a lot for us.
Right.
Now, the schools are important. I went through Cabrillo Unified School District as well as 2 of my other council members, so we're happy to participate in that. But do you see there is a trend shifting toward the normal partnerships with schools where normally cities help and share in funding of recreational sports facilities, that type of sharing things? Are cities starting to put more cash into school districts?
Well, first of all, I want to salute you and the city of Half Moon Bay because you're I have a lot of pet peeves. I love this issue. The city of San Francisco and the city of San Jose have a lot of demands on their city services, but they give a significant piece of their budget to the schools. And I can never understand why more cities in San Mateo County don't support the schools. So I think it's great, and I'm thrilled about that stronger partnership here on the coast, and that the city does that. And you should. I'd like to see other cities in this county, follow your lead. I know you like that answer. The next part of my answer you're not going to like, and that is. Are city services important? Absolutely. They're critical. I think cities need more money than they have. It just goes back to priorities. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm not trying. I don't want cities starving. I don't want social service, public sector people starving. I don't want these other sectors of government in trouble. That having been said, if we only have a limited amount of money, they should live like schools have had to live. And with all due respect, I bet you most of your city employees are not buying their own supplies. When we talk about more money, it's not that we're just like, oh, big government, more money, more money. It's like, why isn't the business community fighting harder for schools to be the top priority of public sector funding? And so that's why I feel so strong about this. And now, the Democrat side of me would say, let's increase the pie so we can fund schools and then fund cities and fund all these services. But I'm also a realist, and at the moment, I don't see us having enough money to do all the things we need to do. So let's start with schools.
I want to get to the positive part, like when do we start solving the problem? Given that there's some projections that we're not going to crawl out of this recession for a really long time and California's in so much trouble, when do we start with bringing these people together and solving the problems?
It's like, come on, let's do this, let's fix the schools. So we shouldn't wait another day, and I do think that there's more consensus out there on some of these needed reforms, and some funding. So we're trying very hard to get, and I know you're working very hard to try to get other business leaders. And the reason I talk so much about business leaders is, you think the coast politics can be crazy. California is so polarized that I don't think you can do something really big without business and labor coming together. So if you're wondering why I keep talking about business so much, it's CTA is obviously going to be involved. Labor is going to be involved in this school issue. We need business heavily involved because we need to come to a solution where the Chamber of Commerce and the Bay Area Council and the realtors are on the same page as the teachers union and say, okay, everybody, let's do this, and then we'll get it done. And if we have business saying something different than the teachers union, I don't think we're going to get it done. And that's why we need to force folks together and get an agreement.
So what could that look like that's more positive? What would something that everyone could say we're actually going to stand on the same side look like?
Okay, so this is me talking, just because not even children now, because I think when you bring people together, you can't bring people together and say, okay, I'm glad we've all brought you together. Here's what you are going to do, and sign right here and goodbye. So I'm not going to say this is exactly what they're going to do. But personally, what they should do is, first of all, totally change the funding system so every kid in the state gets this amount of funding. And if you're special needs or live in a particular area that has special needs, or if you're in intense poverty, you get more. Very simple, you can do that. Just have a rational funding system. I think that you should allow locals to raise the money as you did, but then the state puts in the money to help equalize so that the area kids in poorer communities get more money from the state, but you allow the locals with the majority vote to vote for how much money they want for their schools. I think that you you figure out a way to pay teachers a lot more, but then take some of the suggestions for the business community from how to really make sure that we have a teaching profession that can be the model for a public sector profession, where we attract the best people into it and reward those who are doing well. So those are a few pieces. So have a sensible finance system, get more money into the system, and what I just suggested would necessitate a tax increase, because you would, and it changed the Constitution, because you would need to make it possible for locals to raise money for their schools, and you'd also have to allow the state enough money to provide kids in need the support so that they have a relatively equal shot.
We're going to get that done by 2012.
We
right,
are.
Ted?
We are. We're going. The Constitution's going to change. We're going to have a Constitutional Convention, which is going to make it easier for locals to have control. And at the same time, the business community, the education community is going to get together, and we're going to change the finance system and institute some reforms. And we're going to have a huge party here at the end of 2012, just like we did for the tunnel party. And okay, let me just make the analogy. Yes, it's bigger scale, but I just have to do this for 30 seconds. You don't know what it was like at this time in 1995 when I had impeachment signs because I had the gall to say don't do the bypass, when every powerful elected official, including a lot who took credit for the tunnel, saying don't touch that, we're building a bypass. And if everyone had said that we would actually have the dollars in a construction project here to fix Devil's Slide, within 15 years, you would have been smoking something. I mean, it was an intractable problem. It was not going to get solved. And it did, because we had great people like April and others here saying, we're going to get this done, we're going to fight and do it. So if we could have done that on the coast, and those of you that haven't lived there a long time, Devil's Slide was the 50-year problem that was never going to get solved. So yes, we can solve education. We're going to have a big party here, just like you did the groundbreaking for the tunnel, and it's all going to get solved, and Linda's going to keep pressuring this to get done, and we'll try to get it done in a couple of years.
Solve the funding problem by changing the percentage of vote required to pass certain kinds of things. The question is, can you fix education, but at the same time not necessarily fix everything else? In other words, if you make an across-the-board change, then everybody says, well, we don't want that for, for whatever we took business or this or that or the other.
Yeah. It would be great if locals had the ability to raise money for government services. I think you could do that for everyone, but I think education would get the benefit of that, because I think that the community is more likely to go out and raise money for schools before it will other services. So that would apply to everyone, and I hope the Constitutional Convention does that. If that doesn't happen to the Constitutional Convention, then I think there should be a measure just allowing schools that ability. Not that everyone shouldn't have it, but it would be easier to pass if it was just schools. And the other part of your question is, when I keep talking about a tax increase, the state, there's not enough money being spent on education in this state. And so even if you open it up to the locals to raise more, that's still not going to solve the problems of Los Angeles and Oakland and rural areas. There's just not enough money being spent. So then you also need a statewide tax increase. And I would argue that that statewide tax increase should only go for education, not other services. Would I be against it going for other services? No. Do I think we could get that passed? Probably not. So I hope that sort of answers your question. So you allow locals, everyone to, you make it easier to raise money locally for whatever government service you want. I think education takes the benefit. And then at the state level, you raise the money just for education, because I think that's what you can get passed in this state.
Thank you all for joining us this evening for the second Brews and Views, and look forward to seeing you at future events. And again, thank you one more time to Ted for joining us this evening.